Good day, everyone. Today is July 14th, Thursday, 2022. My name is Frank Candido. I handle corporate communications and investor relations for NuRAN Wireless Inc. and you are on the CSC. And I have with me President and CEO Francis Letourneau and our CFO Jim Bailey coming to us from the UK. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Morning.
We all know that it's been very trying, these markets, last few months. My portfolio has been devastated. A lot of people are suffering, especially in the micro cap, small cap world. So that being said, NuRAN continues to chug along and continues to, what we believe, to deliver on some key points. So we wanted to sort of recap those and maybe give some of our shareholders a little more detail than maybe they get in some of those press releases. And so why don't we get started? And in no particular order, and I know what the big questions are from many of our shareholders, so I ask that you watch the entire video because we will address what we believe to be some very important issues that we receive by text message, email, etc., from our shareholders. So why don't we start with number one? You announced previously that we've added a new independent director to our board of directors. So, what is his role going to be outside of being a director or an independent director, and why is this important to the company going forward?
His role is not totally defined yet, but since Hasan comes with a fantastic operational background, having converted a couple of MNOs into a lot of profit stages for the GZ, for the Orascom and everything, and even Jim worked under Hasan. He knows him pretty well. So we are thinking of creating an operational advisory committee that Hasan would chair. The details are not final yet, but Hasan is bringing that level of expertise to not only help us from a pure underground operational point of view, but for the next months and years, we will be creating multiple new subsidiaries in Africa, like we did for Cameroon, DRC, now South Sudan, and Namibia is soon to come. So we will be creating operation across the board, and we absolutely need somebody to help us along those lines to do the right setup, ensuring that we are making the right decision and having the right strategy in place to achieve our goals. And I think Hasan is going to bring a lot of leverage to what we're doing. Jim, you can probably comment on this. You know him better than I do.
Yeah, I worked with Hasan a number of years ago when I was at Telecel. He was the CEO, I was CFO. Telecel had operations covering all of sub-Saharan Africa. We had about a dozen countries at that time. We were part of the Orascom Telecom group, and so Hasan and I worked very closely together on that. And then Hasan went into an operational role with Orascom, where he, as you say, ran one of their operations basically from shortly after they had been granted the license, and he took that business to be one of the biggest generators of EBITDA for the group, about half of the group from one country. So he's very skilled on the operations side. Since then, he's currently now a board member of a number of companies, tower businesses, mobile businesses. He also has past experience with Orange Telecom, so he knows the culture of that business. So a lot of experience operating in the region where we're in, operating in the space that we're in. I've been talking to Hasan since I joined NuRAN, and even from before, and kept in touch with him. And we've talked to Francis about bringing him on as well. He also knows one of our other board members, Ken Campbell, very well. So it's a really good fit. We're bringing back, we had some great successes. And so he's one of that team, and so bringing back that very successful team that we had And he will bring a lot in operations. And, really the next phase of this business is the focus is going to be more and more operations and being as efficient and growing as efficiently as we can.
Excellent. So earlier this week, we announced an important $2 million unsecured convertible debenture investment into the company. The conversion was very impressive, Jim. It was done at a significant premium to where the stock is trading, almost double, in fact, to where the stock was trading on that day. So outside of what was said in the press release, is there any other insight you can offer the shareholders in terms of this strategic investment? Any more color on who the strategic investor is or why this is important?
It's we can't say too much on the group apart from what was in the press release, which it's a backhaul transmission partner. It came as a strategic investment alongside a commercial agreement to work with them exclusively in our rollouts. As you say, the terms were very good for us. We essentially struck the same terms that we had of the debenture that we entered into in March. I think the discussion was really not about the day-to-day movements in the share price and what was happening in markets and all of those kind of things. It's about the business. It's about our shared vision for the business, what we could do with that, the value that is in this opportunity. We met this group. It was one that we sat with in Barcelona at Mobile World Congress. That's really that's the first time where we said, in serious terms, how could we come together? We had been talking to them before, obviously, about supply agreements and so on, but it kicked off in Barcelona, didn't lose momentum through the whole thing. The real focus, again, was on the business and what we could do as a business together. And they love the upside and opportunity that can come from investment in NuRAN Wireless in Canada. So it was really positive for us.
Nothing more to say than what Jim has said. They came to us, Frank. So that's another extremely good example of the nature and the importance of our business case. They see NuRAN as a growth business in their portfolio, so they absolutely wanted to have skin in the game, and this is what brought us to have really good terms on this convertible note.
Okay, well, within that press release, sort of buried at the bottom, was something that I think is very important to our shareholders across the board, was that you canceled that previously announced $15 million facility that you announced months earlier. So can you just comment on that? Like, why was that canceled? And why is that significant?
So Jim, I will let you answer that one because.
All right. Yeah, we were at the same time we were talking to the group about that 15 million. We were starting the discussions with our strategic investor. The terms of that 15 million were quite onerous, frankly. We didn't feel that it was in the best interests of the shareholders. It was a 15 million to be drawn in tranches, so it wasn't all to come at once. There was some discussion about, bringing funding to support the DFI loans, which I know we're going to talk about in a bit. As we also announced, we don't have that pressing need anymore. We've satisfied that first condition, so that was one thing. The other thing is what we are doing is executing on the plan that we talked about last year when we were in Canada on our roadshow, or at least our visit to various investors and so on, which is to bring investment into the African subsidiary. So we've established that company in Mauritius. That's taken a bit of time to do that, but we established that holding company, and we've been talking and we've been updating in PR and so on about these investor discussions. Those are very real. Those are very live. In fact, I had a call today with one. We're having another on Friday and next week. And those we think are really value enhancing opportunities. It's a way to raise at that private entity level, and it does allow all of those financings, and I know we're going to talk about as well, allow funds to come into the corp anyway, into NuRAN Canada. So we thought that was better for shareholders, and that's been our focus now.
Okay, well, also in that press release, and as importantly, you mentioned that there was a covenant in raising that debt at the African level, whereby you needed to raise a certain portion of equity to release those funds. And you've mentioned in the press release now, and I think it was $6 million, that the $6 million has now been, or the funds, the DFIs are satisfied that enough equity has been raised. Therefore, we no longer have to raise any further equity to release those debt funds. So can you just comment on that a little bit?
Sure. It was right from the outset, and we talked about this in the press releases. It was a 30 million package. The debt was to be 24, and we were bringing the other 6. What we had to show is that we have contributed that 6 into the operations. Okay, so we had to show that we'd spent in Cameroon and DRC on the build, on the operating expenses, and paying for our team and other things, that we contributed that 6 million. That was the first condition to draw down. We did talk about that in various releases. We were at 5.1 million, etc. But now, with all of the funds that we've raised, private placement last year, Amos Spacecom funds that came in, as well as these bridge funds, we've now surpassed that threshold. So there's nothing standing in the way from that point of view of bringing more equity in. Like I say, we're going to talk more about those loans in a minute, but that was a key sort of turning point for us to reach that goal, and we're now just on the final stages of bringing those loans in. But what it means is there's no one, we're not having to rely on anybody else to trigger that debt. If we're masters of our own destiny in this case, because we've done what we have to do already.
Okay, well, this is a perfect segue into the debt then. My understanding has always been that the focus for NuRAN for deployments is really at the African level. Like, up until now, it seems to me that we've financed all of the deployments to date from NuRAN corporate. But the business plan and the model is based on us financing those deployments at the African level and not at NuRAN corporate. So where do we stand then with respect to that debt that we've announced? When is that, where are we in the process of having that money unlocked so that we can continue to accelerate the deployment of sites?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about the financing, I guess, and then I'll let Francis talk about the deployment and so on. But the debt is very much so DFI, Development Finance Institution. This is all about development in underserved markets. It's all about what we're all about, which is bringing connectivity. There are a number of conditions that come with that type of debt. On the one hand, it's, let's say, inexpensive. It's a variable rate loan. We don't have extensive security coming from the parent. It's very favorable terms in that regard. What they do require, however, is that we, let's say, uphold the top standards in terms of deployment. So one of the things that we've had to put a lot of attention towards, which we are already doing, but these are conditions of closing, was ESG, environmental and social governance. And so there were a number of conditions precedent to that, which involved us. We've retained consultants. They're going through the process of getting all the necessary environmental permits and approvals that are required, as well as putting together a framework that will guide our work going forward, not just in Cameroon and DRC, which this debt refers to, but across Africa. So that was one thing. There's a fairly onerous, due diligence, tax. We had to set up that subsidiary in Mauritius, which we've done. That was there was some discussion around whether we would go into Mauritius or where. So there was a lot of tax work done and that type of thing. So we've set that company up. You've got to set up bank accounts. You've got to. So there was a lot of, KYC, know your client type of due diligence, tax, et cetera, that we had to go through. We're now at the stage of kicking off the documentation of the loans. Okay, we announced in the press release as well that we have one of the funders has received board approval, so they're done. They've got full board approval. The other lender, just the way they're structured, has a package that will have to go through a process now that is underway. We delivered the last documents recently. Again, it was some administrative things of getting the right authority in the right country and the right office to give us the document. Now done that. And what they've said is, let's start with the loan documentation. We're this confident that this loan will be approved. Let's go ahead and start that. So we're in the process of retaining legal counsel in, it's actually the UK. They want UK lawyers to manage the process. And it's just a case of completing that work, and we're done on all the financial things, and we'll be ready to draw down that money. And that is, as you say, always the reason was to fund the build from funds raised in Africa. The one other thing to mention is that the DFI has extended their loan by 3 million, which has allowed us to simplify the structure and the security by not requiring other finance that we needed. So that it was good news. It means it's coming at the same time as the other funding. So there was a slight delay that we've had to deal with, and that's where this bridge funding has come in. But we've now got a much cleaner package, security, borrowing, all of that type, and ongoing management that really puts us on a strong foot to continue with the build. And I'll give it to Francis to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, that's exactly again leads into the next thing. So I think we're actually following a pretty interesting sequence of events here in terms of our discussion. We're getting inundated with text messages and emails daily on where we are with respect to deployments. So Francis, maybe you can take a minute or two to update us on the sites that are currently deployed, how those sites are doing, and then, with respect to unlocking this debt financing to continue to accelerate deployments going forward. So maybe you want to just comment on that.
Yes, thank you, Frank. So rapidly, just to continue on Jim's point, the 3 million additional money that we will get from one of the DFI, take out the Afriland First Bank loan that was accepted and that we announced in February. So we haven't drawn down this money yet. So hence the reason for doing bridge money today. So bottom line, we have 82 sites completed in Cameroon and DRC, part of the NAS. The Ghana site, it's 7 sites. It's not in a NAS format, but we have 7 sites ongoing, and we look forward to do more business with Vodafone in Ghana, but let's concentrate on the build plan. 53 sites in Cameroon, 29 sites in DRC, that accounts for 82. And from those 82 sites, DRC, we had to improve from a technical issue perspective, which we did. This process has been completed. We have completely reviewed the site selection process as well, identification of the sites and everything, having somebody that came from Orange, the former director of rural deployment from Orange Daddy, has currently reviewed the total site selection process. We're now improving on that front. The 120 sites that has to be deployed in DRC are fully identified, and most of it have been selected already. From a Cameroon perspective, the upgrades of the sites that were over generating and busting the KPIs. When I say busting KPIs, is that you have service level agreement attached to our contracts. And one of the metrics that we need to follow is called a blocking rate. And due to the the low capacity of the site versus the usage, we had a lot of blocking rate coming from from at least it's 16 sites out of the 53 in Cameroon. So we have started the upgrade, if not almost completed the upgrades of those sites. So 8 have been done, and we are seeing more revenues coming from those sites. So for Cameroon, Cameroon is overachieving since the beginning. As we turn on a site, we see more penetration rate than our expectation, and the revenues are higher than our financial model and tied into the type of revenue that we're expecting from those sites since the beginning. So this is for DRC and Cameroon. But back to the fact that there's been a significant slowdown in the build phase. One of the key reasons is, of course, tied to cash, as you said perfectly, and Jim reported to that. The financing of the African rollout was planned to be done at the African level. So, and then since we have still not yet drawn down all the money from the DFIs, it's NuRAN Canada that has been financing everything that was ongoing in Africa. And of course, we have not been receiving financing at the same pace or at the same level that we would have liked. So of course, this is something that is being resolved. We're approaching the end with the DFI money. That is coming quite nicely. Once we have the documentation lined up, we will be able to resume the tower build, and we still think that we can achieve our target for 2022, but we will be reporting after we get the financing. But there's nothing blocking us from a logistic procurement and build capacity point of view, Frank. So we're still on track for this thing. It's really the money that has been dragging for quite a while. So of course, the Canada funding has not been coming at the faster pace either. So it's just this, but we've continued improving our processes. We've continued improving our capacity and our performance of the site. And there will be not at the fast pace that we would have expected, but I think that still during the summer, we will be building sites because all this improvement that we've done allow us to think that we can build sites. So we will report to shareholders as the DFI money comes in, how we will improve and meet our target for 2022.
Okay, so you said something pretty important there. You suggested that there's no logistical issue, there's no supply chain issue, there are no issues with respect to deploying sites on an accelerated fashion, that the only blockage is cash. And we have been using cash from corporate to deploy sites, which we don't want to be doing because we don't want to be, especially not at these levels, diluting shareholders to deploy sites when we know that this cash is coming at the African level on a significantly less diluted level to deploy sites. So just to repeat then, you're confident then, depending on when this money comes in, but the sooner the better, obviously, that you may be able to still achieve your number at this stage that you had suggested for the year, of course, dependent on how much more delay there is on getting this cash in. But you're still confident then from a logistical point of view that you can get all these deployments done as long as you've got cash in the bank to get it done.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I hope that this puts to rest the dozens and dozens of text messages and emails that we get We will report to our shareholders as soon as this DFI money becomes available, and when we start accelerating the deployments again, with the plan of where we're deploying, and we will update our shareholders in terms of the pace of deployment as well, when that happens. So that said, then why don't we go to the next point, which is revenue. Jim, maybe you want to touch on this. While this is all happening, NuRAN, I'm assuming, is still generating revenue. Is that correct? And is that revenue increasing, or do we see an increase as we go forward, which is what we've projected?
Yeah, that's the good news about being in the telephone service business, is that we generate this recurring revenue stream, and that's really what makes the NaaS model so attractive. So we have that strong equipment, very robust, very reliable. As Francis said, we're hitting some capacity just because we've generated so much traffic. But yes, we've reported on our revenue and our financials. We are generating revenue, collecting. There's two things going on. One, we have this minimum guaranteed revenue. So each time a site comes on, we have a 2-week period after which it's gone live that we just work the bugs out and have it accepted by the operator. And then we immediately start invoicing the minimum guaranteed revenue. And that is that's set up such that it covers our CapEx, it covers the cost of the capital of that CapEx, it covers the operating costs in country to run that site. So immediately we get this minimum guaranteed, and as the number of sites increases, that increases in a step function. Then you have going on behind that is the revenue, and once the revenue
share.
The revenue share. I mean, there's a calculation you have to do as to how much the operator gets and how much we get. Once that passes above the minimum guarantee, then we collect that as well. So all of that has been improving over time. And as we've added sites and as we've increased capacity, so when we increase capacity, the minimum guaranteed price goes up as well for that site because we put more capital into it, and it leads to more traffic. So one of the things that Francis talked about is improving our processes, improving our procedures and all of that. It's also about working better with the operators, or working, not better, let's say working well with the operator to get traffic numbers. We do reconciliations against the traffic. We know how much traffic we're generating because we have that visibility on our site, so we can do the reconciliations. And it's just a process now of as we add sites, we just keep adding that revenue. And I mean, I think we talked about it before, literally from the day you turn a site on, any handsets that are in the region, any mobile phones that are in that coverage area are identified by the site and can generate traffic and revenue. So it's a telephone utility model, and we're going into regions that have no coverage. So this is the first time a lot of these people have the ability from where they live or work to use the mobile network. And so it doesn't go away. Once it's built, it's there and it keeps going. And that's what we're now leveraging. And it's running in line with our business plan. And in Cameroon, it's exceeding our business plan projections.
Jim, if I may add something, sorry, Frank, if I may add something, you said something extremely important here. The business model of NuRAN is to serve and to connect people. And if you look at what's going on from a telecommunication worldwide point of view, when things go wrong in an economy, telephony picks up because everybody talk on the phone. That pandemic has shown a huge need to get people connected. So we are a utility. We are bringing the last mile connectivity, bringing those users to use the network. So the business of NuRAN is going to be a pretty stable, predictable, sustainable type business model. We are in the utility space. It's a basic need, telephony these days. So it will not go down. It will just increase in terms of usage. That's it. And this is what we've seen in North America everywhere, and it continues to grow. So it's going to happen as well as we build site, as we bring more users to the community of users. So bottom line, NuRAN is in a space where the business is going to be pretty stable and pretty growing over time. So it generates value for the shareholders automatically. So it's a safe investment, a safe bid to support NuRAN and to help the company grow. So that's extremely important point to make. And you will probably see a lot of push from NuRAN on this side, because this is key element to an investment. ESG is also part of the reason for investing in NuRAN, but that utility fact is one of the most important, in my opinion.
Okay, there's two more questions, before we end this video. The first is directed to Jim, and the second will be directed to Francis. Jim, can you comment on the African equity? We've discussed in the past that we're also talking to some equity players at the African level. Can you maybe comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, this is something we've talked about previously, like I say, about almost a year ago now, but we showed our proposed structure, which was an African holding where we could bring equity and debt into that structure. That's exactly what we've been doing. We first, as we said, triggered the debt commitments. That was announced in January. So it's all sticking to plan. Alongside that debt, we're bringing equity. We talked about the $6 million that we had to commit, but we also took the decision that we should raise more than the equity that's just required to go alongside that 27 million. So we're out talking to people now, investors, with a lot of interest in about raising 25 million of equity. It's much more than is needed to trigger to go alongside the 27 million of DFI debt. And what we're doing is two things. One, we're kickstarting deployment in new countries as we sign them, and as we've announced, we've got new awards of contracts and agreements coming. But it also supports more debt, because we want to keep bringing debt to the picture, and that helps the equity story, return to shareholders. So yes, we have a number of conversations. They're all proceeding well. It's much different in terms of the implications of the public company, because it's not the dilution. Out of interest, some of those investors are interested in participating in the public company as well. So it's really been exciting for us. And we had an introduction not long ago from one of our advisors who just happened to be having a conversation with a significant investor. We're now well progressing with that group as well. So there were some that we approached, others have approached us, and we're very confident. Like I said, we don't need the money to unlock the 27 million. It will go alongside that and support that, but it will also pre-fund next phase of debt. And we're really in the driver's seat, I think, more in terms of timing and our ability to negotiate and use that in the best way to accelerate the build and just keep this business model moving along.
Mm-hmm.
Well, which leads to the last question perfectly again. You talk about raising equity at the African level. You talk about that permitting us to raise further debt at the African level to continue to deploy sites on new contracts as we go forward. So Francis, new contracts, we've got a 10,000 site target that we've talked about all the time. And how's that going? How confident are you that we're going to continue to add to that number in the coming days, weeks, months? How do you feel? And what can you say about that?
We have a growing pipeline, Frank, that we've been reporting on, and what the two significant steps to bring that pipeline into backlogs is the announcement of those tier one MNOs RFP selection that we did the last spring. It take time. Those are big machines to turn around, get contracts signed, and move on. But we are on the verge of having a couple of thousand sites in our backlog now from this pipeline with the large telcos in Africa. So, and we're progressing quite well. One of them, we've stated in a press release that we needed to get the group framework agreement or general framework agreement. This is about to be completed. That allow us to then sign service agreement with the different subsidiaries of that tier one MNO, and it's coming. It is coming. We're working on that. But as again, it's not a small company like us, which requires 1, 2, 3 person attention. It requires multiple person attention, multiple levels of approval. So, but we're getting there. Frank, we are aiming in the right position. I'm expecting that the 10,000 site under contract, which fears Jim, because it will then put stress on the financing side. But once we have those sites under contract, we will then need to deliver. And this is the reason for that equity money that we're talking about at the African level that will allow us to start right away with those operations. So that will give us or position us favorably in the eyes of those mobile network operator to say, okay, these guys can do fast, these guys can do whatever, and bringing us on. So it all tied up together, Frank. So we are at an inflection point now. So we have, we're up to a stage to potentially have close to $60 million in the bank account in the next coming months in order to achieve all the most of the goals that we have set for ourselves for 2022, 2023. And there will be more debt raised, more equity raised as we speak, and more contracts signed. So I strongly believe, I'm pretty sure that this 10,000 site target and $250 million in revenue target in 5 years is going to be met. So we're aiming in the right direction. We're signing the right contract. We're bringing the right debt partner, and we need to put a lot of new players in the team to bring us where we want to go. So bottom line, we're on the right pace to get things done.
Okay, so just to recap then, we're in some very trying markets, interest rates increasing, inflation increasing, stocks getting hammered, but we're in a good position. We've got our second strategic investor that's invested in the company at the corporate level. We're about to unlock the debt that we need to deploy sites in an accelerated fashion in Africa. We feel pretty good about bringing some equity at the African level at levels that would be significantly less dilutive than bringing equity in at the corporate level. We feel pretty good about announcing a bunch of new contracts, it sounds, in the next little bit here, getting us closer to that 10,000 site target. And generally, we feel pretty good about the direction we're heading in on a global basis. So it sounds pretty positive from the point of view of a company operating under the constraints of the Canadian microcap market, whereby, our market cap and enterprise value don't really reflect where we think we are, or we're about to be in the next month, 2 months, 6 months. So, I'd just like to thank Jim. Jim is in the UK, Francis in Quebec City, myself in Montreal. I hope that this video answered a lot of the questions that we've been receiving from our shareholders in the last, weeks and months. And we look forward to more news in the market shortly over the next, few weeks, over the next few months. And we will update our shareholders once again with another similar type corporate video when time permits and when we have more significant information to share with you. So thank you once again. Today is July 14th, 2022. I'm Frank Candido on behalf of Jim Bailey and Francis Letourneau. Thank you. Have a great day.